Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to take a look at how we can register our API as an API resource within IdentityServer. Now what we're going to do first of all is come into our IdentityServer's startup class, and you'll notice that we have an in-memory client for our console application, and we have an API scope with our in-memory API scopes. And what you're going to want to do is come down to the bottom here and say add in-memory API resources. And this is a list of API resources, like so. And we can say new API resource with a name of simply API. Again, you can feel free to change this name to whatever suits your particular API and its requirements. And next up, we can specify a list of scopes that this API resource exposes. Now this is the API scope that we defined earlier in our list of in-memory API scopes. So basically this means that we have a new API resource called API, and we're specifying that it exposes the API scope that we created earlier on. Again, if you had potentially a read scope and a write scope, then you can add those scopes as separately in this list of scopes that the API exposes. So now that we've added our API as an in-memory API resource, we can come into our API's startup class, and currently we have the API set to not validate the audience, and that's because previously the API was not registered as an API resource within IdentityServer, and that means that an audience claim is not emitted into the access token from IdentityServer. So now that we've registered our API resource into IdentityServer with a name of API, we can specify that the audience is API. So we can say options.audience equals API, like so. And again, it's important this audience name matches exactly whatever you've called the API resource in IdentityServer. I've given it a name of API for now to make it clear. However, you could use, for example, a GUID or any other unique identifier to uniquely identify each of your APIs. So now that we've created our API resource there, like so, we've registered the audience in our startup class in our JWT bearer options. We can now attempt to get an access token again and send an authenticated request without disabling audience validation within our API. So what we can do, come up to here and we can run the IdentityServer project, like so. Give that a few moments to spin up, and that will open up our IdentityServer. Next up, we can select our API and we can run the API. Give it a few moments and we now have our API running in the background. And then last but not least, we can come down to our console application and we can now run our console application, like so. You'll notice once again we have a list of weather forecasts. However, if we take a closer look at the access token, we should be able to notice something a little bit different with this access token at this time around. Back in jwt.io, if you paste that access token over on the left hand side, you'll notice inside our payload we have again the issuer, the not before, the issued at, the expiry, the scope, and the client ID. However, we also have this audience claim, and that audience is essentially who the access token is intended for. So we've set up our API with an audience of API, and that means that this access token is intended to be used to send requests to an audience of API, which is our API project that we previously created. So by registering our web API inside IdentityServer as an API resource, that means that it will emit this audience claim into the access token, and that means that we do not need to disable audience validation in our API, and we can simply specify the audience of whatever unique identifier you gave your API with an IdentityServer. And that means that we now have an access token that can be used to send authenticated requests to IdentityServer and our web API. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.